Hey everyone, we are back for another episode of the Recovery Playbook, and I am so excited to have one of my main guys in recovery, Jimmy Shin. Hello, what's happening?
Nothing much, man. Good to be here.
Good. How you like our beautiful set?
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah, it was a nice drive up here, too.
Good.
Such a beautiful day.
And I know we're living in unusual times,
Yeah.
right? How has that affected your business in the times we live in right now?
At first, man, it was a real just, kick in the chest. It was really my comedy promoting, producing business was really thriving. I was taking the Shindig show, which is my show, all across the country. And then, of course, the pandemic came around and just stopped everything, and everything closed, all the clubs. And I didn't know what to make of it. And remember the good old days when we thought, just till like May, this will happen. We could stay patient till May, right? And then it was like July, just stay patient and then July came around. And honestly, finally, I had to get to a point where I had to surrender it, let go and let God. And I surrendered sort of my career and what was going on with the coronavirus to God. And right when that happened, started doing some Zoom shows, started getting really big headliners on Zoom shows. And so they started being really good and actually started being fun. At first it was like, it's a different format going to Zoom from a live show. I was always under the impression that stand-up was meant to be seen live. And so it was a tough transition, but then I got used to it. You make a few little, changes and you change it up, and then all of a sudden it's fun. It's comedy. It's still not stand-up, in the traditional sense, but it turned out fun. And then all of a sudden, this is a great story about surrender. Just surrendered, but waiting for things to open up, and every month it's, not opening up. Then my friend wanted me to give her a cake at this meeting down at Silver Lake. I don't know if you've ever been to that meeting, the Brunswick meeting. And I went to give her a cake, and it's this beautiful sort of auditorium outside stadium type of amphitheater. And she went and got her cake, and people were taking their cakes and cracking jokes, as we often do in meetings. And people were laughing, and you could hear the laughter just amplified. And after doing
And the light went on. The light went on for you.
Exactly. The light just came on. It was like, honestly.
You're like, who runs this building? Who runs this building? I need his name. Let's do this now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm going to figure out, where the trail goes to, right? So I met with the pastor, a really great guy. Turns out he's in the program.
Of course.
I told him.
It's like Fight Club, right? Our program's like Fight Club.
It really is. And he was just so understanding of our predicament. And he was like us, we needed laughter more than ever. And he wanted to help. And so I started doing shows at this, a church. Right. And the funniest part is, all these comedians aren't clean, church comedy, you know what I mean? And do you know Ant?
Yeah, of course I know Ant. Yeah.
Yep. He comes there, he brings the pastor up there, and he starts asking the pastor about anal with his wife. And this pastor's so cool, and I'm thinking, we're going to get canceled. This is it.
You blew it for us, you idiot. You blew it. Yeah.
And only Ant can get away with it, right? He did it in a graceful and super funny way. Honestly, I don't think I've laughed that hard, in the 8 months of quarantine and being in the pandemic. But, it was great. And the pastor loved it, and he was just such a good sport. And since then, we've been doing it every Friday ever since.
So what came to mind just now is I just want to ask you, when did you know you were funny? When did you know you were funny?
I've always known I was funny, but I was always getting in my own way. And oftentimes my disease, my addiction also got in my way. It'd be one of those things where you'd blow some lines with a friend and go, yeah, I'm going to, tomorrow I'm going to go do an open mic. I'm going to do stand-up. But you'd always be in such fear because you knew that you weren't living right. You knew that you weren't living at your maximum capacity. And so I just never really had the balls to do it. But always I was the class clown. And one thing stand-up did for me, though, is kind of reel my comedy in so it's more appropriate. Like I would crack jokes at the worst time ever. Like you'd be in a business meeting and I'd just crack some sex joke or be in class and then trying to lecture on something serious. And, I would crack jokes, and in law school I would crack jokes and I'd get people laughing, but at the same time it was very inappropriate. And I see that now through the working of the steps and seeing my part in everything. But back then, that was my channel, is just cracking jokes whenever I could.
So we're here at Startup Recovery, and our tagline is shifting addiction to passion. And when did you shift from what I know to be maybe like a corporate-minded guy into stand-up comedian? Tell me how that shift happened and how your recovery and your sobriety helped you get there.
Well, it's kind of a long story, but to me,
let's start with your rock bottom. Okay. What was your rock bottom like?
My rock bottom was I was on felony probation. I was selling pot while I was going to law school. They don't like that very much.
And, a Netflix series next year. Right.
And that was my rock bottom. I got busted, and my parents never knew about my double life, and to disappoint them, and to know how much they had invested into me and the money and the time, and it just broke my heart to know that I had disappointed them so much. And so to me, that was my rock bottom. Then I still couldn't stop. Even with a felony probation, I was still in law school. I could still get it together, but it's not one of those things where you could just shut off, as you well know, Greg. Right, yeah. What I wanted to do, I couldn't do, and what I didn't want to do, I continued doing, and I just couldn't stop even while on probation, and I ended up overdosing at a strip club while I was getting a lap dance, and I remember waking up in the hospital and, a tube down my throat, and the doctor comes in and says, you almost died. And to be honest, that wasn't the crazy part. The crazy part was 3 days later, I was out drinking and doing coke again.
It's so sick. It's so sick that we come that close. Mm-hmm. And just a short time after, I got this. We utter those 3 words that will kill alcoholics and addicts every time. I got this. And so you pull out of that, right? And how does someone go from law school to possible lawyer to what you do today?
Well, again, I'm on felony probation. I'm sober, managed to get a real estate business going, but I go in front of the bar and they say no, because I'm on felony probation. And so they said, go ahead and rehabilitate yourself. And during that time, I decided to get a real estate license, and the market was just hot up in Seattle. So I was making, great money, had some homes and investment properties. This was in 07. Okay. 06, from 05 to 08, it was really good. And then in 08, as you know, the market completely crashed. Yeah. And at that time, I was just doing comedy just for fun, and I would just, invite everyone out from the brokerage or from my meetings and stuff. And then when I came down to, that's when I decided to come down to LA. I just lost everything in 08. And I'm like, if I'm going to be broke up here, I can't close a loan to save my life, not making any money. If I'm going to be broke in rainy Seattle, I'd rather go pursue my passion, which is stand-up comedy. So, again, it's sort of the worst thing that happened to me created an opportunity for me and an opportunity to pursue my passion.
Yeah. I love that. It happens so many times for us. So the podcast is called the Recovery Playbook. And what I always try to do is get somebody on here who can give me their playbook. And what I mean by that is What was your playbook your first 90 days, your first year of sobriety? And then my second part of my question is, what's your playbook today? And how has it changed?
Honestly, my playbook is, from the first year has been surrendering my will and my life. And unfortunately, I take my will and my life back so many times. And it takes the pandemic, it takes the '08 crisis, it takes trying to get sober and not being able to do it for me to finally, they say recovery or God is sometimes the last door on the block. I'm trying to make it the second door on the block now, or the third as I mature, in my spiritual program. I'm trying to make it the first door of my life. And I think I'm doing pretty good at that because, what would have took me, 8 years of spinning or something to try to figure it out. In this case, I was probably depressed for about 8 months when the pandemic hit, or 8 days rather.
Yeah, 8 days.
8 days. And then it was like, okay, I give it to you, God. And then when you surrender, you're in a place where things can open up for you.
It's a great point. I love that, Jimmy. I love that you bring that to the audience to see that. I have a little saying that's similar to that. Rejection is God's protection.
Yeah.
When that door closes, another door opens. And it's our job to walk through that open door. Anybody that I know is successful, lawyer, executive, stand-up comedian, has routine. What is your daily routine?
I'm a creature of habit.
Tell me.
I'm an addict. And I know that about myself. So what I do is I utilize that knowledge. So I can get addicted to anything. I can get addicted to food, to
Netflix.
Anything, right?
Yeah.
And so knowing that, I make sure and get addicted to the right things. So currently I'm addicted to yoga. I'm addicted to working out. I'm addicted to stand-up. I'm addicted to learning things. Like I'm constantly, listening to podcasts and audiobooks in the car. So I utilize my sort of OCD and, whatever I'm going to get into, I'm going to get into. So I make sure that I'm getting into the right things that are going to improve my life rather than be a detriment.
Let's go back to recovery. Okay, so there's 3 words that I love asking all my guests about, and I'll give them to you shotgun style. Here we go. Resentment.
Resentment. The biggest resentment I had was to my dad. He was an alcoholic when I was growing up. He abused me, physically and mentally. He never believed in me and never saw me. And so I had to hide who I was my whole life, and then he also sort of brainwashed me into becoming or trying to become a lawyer. He had a vision board on my wall since I was like 12 years old that says Jimmy Shin, attorney at law. And so I would look at that every day and think, yeah, I want to be a lawyer. But what I found out going to law school was just, I was miserable and it wasn't me, right? And so it took a lot of trial and error to find what my passion really was. But finally, I experienced a miracle prior to the pandemic. My parents had never seen me perform live. And one of the things that I did with instruction of my sponsor is because I hustled my parents so much, right? And so I would send them $100 every month, and just for not becoming a lawyer, and all the times I called my dad and said, hey, I need books, and he'd be like, books again, right? And so I just started sending him $100. Finally, one time he called me just in tears. He goes, you don't have to send this check anymore. But I still kept sending them. And then he stopped cashing them. So it was like a weird thing. And through those months, it allowed me to have emotional freedom, spiritual freedom, and to ask for forgiveness for the things that I had done. And so for me to forgive my dad, I had to see my part in that, right? And my part was, hey, man, I lied to my dad. I manipulated him for money. I told him I was going to law school and being studious, and I was selling drugs. And so owning up to that and then making a financial amends every month, like my sponsor told me to, it created a situation where we could forgive each other. Then right prior to the pandemic, I had a show. My parents had never seen me perform live. When I first moved to LA, my dad wanted me to move back home all the time. He'd go, you suck, like.
Really?
Yeah, he'd be like, when you gonna get married? Why you no kids? You gay, right? Like, he'd just mess with me, like my thorn in my side. And then he finally figured out Facebook. And now he posts on my wall. You're a friend of mine. Like, he always posts on my wall, you are #1 comedian in the world, still in like broken English. And he writes the same thing. I delete it because it's kind of embarrassing that he posts so much. But he's like my biggest supporter, And then he comes to see me, in Tacoma.
For the first time. In your hometown.
In my hometown.
Yeah.
So it's a big night. All my old friends from junior high, high school.
Some of your lower companions.
Some of my lower companions, yeah.
Yeah.
And, they bring 10 of their friends. Half of them don't even speak English. And during my set, my dad stands up and starts filming me. And you can't film at those places, as you know. And so the manager came, told him to stop. He still kept filming. But what I realized is he was that proud of me. He went from telling me I sucked to move back home, that I was never going to make it in LA as an Asian comedian, to being my biggest supporter. Still online, he's still posting. And it's just a testimony to the healing power of this program when you really work the steps. And, I took my sponsor's suggestion, did those financial amends. We were talking about it prior to the podcast. I wrote him a letter that I never sent.
But you had to get it out of you.
I had to get it out. I had to get it out. And then I shredded it, never sent it. But that moment, I was completely free. A couple months ago, I went up to see my parents. And it was the best experience I've ever had with my dad, And I realized at that moment I had no more resentment towards him, that I had forgiven him, that it's all love, and I was able to have compassion on him and what he might have went through, because he didn't even have a dad, So he was just being the authoritative dad that he thought a dad should be, and so I understood that, and I had empathy and compassion for him, and it's through this program that I was able to have that different change in perception, right? That's what we're looking for.
I just love that story. It is a testament to you, and it's also a testament, like you said, to the program. So the other two words, you already touched on one, forgiveness. I think you kind of explained that to my audience as well. But the other one that's real powerful for us, both when we're in our disease and when we finally pop out of it, shame. Shame. How does shame show up for you? How have you dealt with shame?
I had a lot of shame for the things that I had done until I understood the disease aspect of alcoholism. Because I couldn't get sober, because, I had done a lot of, bad things in my disease, I thought I was a bad seed, a bad person. But understanding the disease aspect of it also made me understand myself, that I could have compassion on myself, because I had this disease that was driving me to do things that I normally wouldn't do. In fact, like, I'm just a different person now that I'm sober compared to, 10 years ago. But with that said, I don't want people to listen to this and run with that. Go, I have a disease, right? I'm going to go shoot some heroin and rob a bank. It's not an excuse. That's the paradox, is that now that you have this disease and you know about recovery, it's important to take responsibility.
The way I frame it up for people when I'm coaching them or I'm sponsoring them, I say, look, there's Jimmy and there's Jimmy the asshole. Jimmy the asshole is the one that caused all the damage. That's the guy we got to keep out of the room. This guy, with the mask off, is the real Jimmy. And that's the guy needs to do the work so Jimmy the asshole doesn't show up anymore.
Like that.
Like it? It's a friendly way of calling you an asshole.
I noticed that.
No, but you're not.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. No more. But we were animals out there. Animals. You put booze in, no, coke up the nose. We all consequences go out the window.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I want to move back into your career. And what I want to ask is this, we are big believers in mentors. We think that mentors really shape you. And so in your world, I'm going to say they're probably more seasoned comedians, some comedy writers. Who have been your influences as you started to take this new trip into being a stand-up comedian?
Oh man, there's so many people that I can name, but Daryl Hammond has been a close friend and a mentor of mine. And he's been a big.
Both men in recovery.
Both men in recovery.
Yep.
Both did big things in stand-up and been around for 25, 30 years. And so I would mention those two, but of course, I can't. I have to mention my sponsor. I have to mention. My parents too, they've been a big support since I've been sober and, really supporting me in every way. And now I'm just so happy that I get to be present for them and give back to them. You know what I'm saying?
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. So in your line of work, you've gotten to do some cool things. What are some of the coolest things you sit there and you kind of pinch yourself that have happened to you?
Man, I still pinch myself 'cause I talk to the biggest comedians. I mean, in one day I'll talk to like Whitney and I'll talk to like, Kevin Nealon, and just when people look at the list of my text messages, they're just blown away. It's like a list of who's who of comedy. And I've done shows with some of my biggest heroes. I've done a show in the main room and had Bill Burr come up to me, shake my hand and say, "You were great, you were funny." And I'm just like, it's one of those situations where you're like speechless and you wish you would have said something cool, but you just can't say anything. You should have said thanks, right? I brought up Margaret Cho, growing up, she was the only Asian person that I saw doing what I couldn't even dream of doing back then, right? And so I got to bring her up and give her a big hug. I'm her friend now. We talk on the phone. I forgot to mention her, yeah. She gives me advice. I've done a special at the Roxy Theater. You were there.
I was there.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah.
Huge.
And
Big show.
Yeah. I've had Eliza Schlesinger, open for me at the Roxy Theater. So it's been just a crazy ride. I can sit here and mention all the glamorous, things and everything, but honestly, it's just a testament to what this program can do if you really work it and you put that passion that you put into drugs and alcohol and you point it towards something you really love.
Last night I shared downstairs in a meeting and I said, we've all gotten in our cars at 4 a.m. and drove to neighborhoods we normally wouldn't drive to, right? What if you did that same thing to go to a neighborhood you're not supposed to for an AA meeting?
Yeah.
You'll be sober.
Yeah.
You'll be sober. Two more questions on your line of business. One is, and this just may be my own stereotype that I've heard over the times, but you hear stand-up comedians are dark. They're lonely. They're the saddest people on the earth. I don't know that many stand-up comedians, but I'm asking you, since you're in that world, since you're in that ecosystem so much, how much truth is in that? And what is that?
There is some truth to it because comedy does come from tragedy and sometimes depression. I have in the past suffered from depression. However, I started meditating 3 years ago. I started doing TM and I haven't missed a day since. Wow. And honestly, I think it's a stereotype, just like there's stereotypes about everything else, right? That some people say.
But there's a sliver of truth to all stereotypes.
There's a sliver of truth to it.
That is the truth.
It is the truth.
That is the truth.
However, you can overcome it there's a spiritual solution to that too.
So, since you brought up meditation, how'd you find it? How'd you pick TM? Tell me what your routine is. Here's why. Because there's someone listening or watching going, oh, I'm willing to be willing. Jimmy Shin told me to meditate. I'm going to meditate. So tell me how you discovered it.
Well, I've always dabbled in meditation, but I was never consistent. And one day I woke up, I was super stressed out. I was producing 6 shows in 1 week, main room, biggest names in Hollywood. I wake up, half my face is paralyzed. I'm thinking I'm having a stroke, you know? I'm like, all those years of doing blow and not a sign of a stroke, and now I'm sober for 4 years, and, you know, now I get a stroke. I go to the doctor, he immediately takes one look at me, and he goes, you have Bell's palsy, and it's stress related. You know, have you been stressed out lately? I'm like, yeah, I've been real stressed out lately. You know, just running from here to there, you know, like an addict, you know? And I was very troubled because I'm a performer. I got to get in front of people, and like half my face is deformed. I can't move it. Can't drink soup. It's coming down the side of my mouth. I can't, you know, blink one eye. So I'm like, you know, having to tape my eyes shut and all that. So right then, my friend Greg goes, hey, you want to go to this TM seminar at the David Lynch Foundation? I'm like, sure. You know, what do I have to lose? I go there. I take to it like a duck to water, you know, because I'm desperate. You know, I need to relax.
The gift of desperation.
Yes.
Isn't it amazing how it shows up for us?
Yeah. And so another serendipity.
Yep.
You know, all these serendipitous situations have led me
And all you had to do
that.
was say yes. Say yes and walk through that door, you know? I'm so glad you brought that up because I meditate, I do breath work. Those are two things I discovered later in my sobriety. I just recently celebrated 26 years. And I just started those two things in the last 10 years. You know, my first 15 years of sobriety, I thought the 11th step was prayer or meditation. And so I left the second part of that off because I thought guys who meditated had ponytails and tank tops. And I don't have a ponytail and I don't wear tank tops.
Yeah. Another stereotype.
Another stereotype.
With a sliver of truth.
With a sliver of truth.
Yeah.
And then one day I saw a speaker in San Francisco say, hey, I do the 11th step this way. I meditate and then I pray. And like you, I said, I can try that. Went back to my hotel room and I meditated. And guess what? The prayer, and that's how I've been doing it for the last 10 years. I meditate to open up the channel and then I pray.
That's exactly what I do.
Boom.
That's exactly. And no one told me to do that. I was just sort of led out of the meditation to start just praying when I'm pulling out of it.
That's
Yeah, no one told me to do that.
No, yeah, someone had to tell me to do it. And I go, oh, I'll try it. And it works. And so that's why I share from the podium that way, because there's someone in the audience that goes, oh, I need to do that. This is what we have to do. We have to always share what's going on. So one thing I want to ask you is we do a lot of intention work here. Like we do 10 intentions, right? What are some intentions coming up for you that you, like when I say, Jimmy, in a few years, I'm going to say, you told me this on my show 3 years ago. You told me this on my show 5 years ago. What are some things you are putting out there that you want to see done?
That's another thing that I do in my meditation. Of course, you know, I was always trying to manifest prior to that, and I believe in the law of attraction and all that. But in my meditation, through my mantra, I'm able to, David Lynch describes the mantra and TM as a key to your subconscious. And in that place, you can manifest things. And that's when, like right when I'm pulling out of it, I will start visualizing what I want my life to look like. I visualized my special. I self-produced it. Didn't have the money, didn't have, you know, the knowledge. All of a sudden, my friend Aristotle, who is my friend now, but I didn't know him then, who produced, you know, 4 other specials of like Eric Griffin, Tom Arnold, you know, on and on, Fahim Anwar. And then all of a sudden, he was willing to just to help me out for free. He charged Tom Arnold like $20,000. Hopefully Tom Arnold doesn't hear this. But it's just God manifesting these people and this help that comes, and then all of a sudden the money came.
By the way, you do have one hell of a sponsor, by the way. I just love him. He is such a mensch. So you've been in good hands. So I'm going to wind down this interview with you, but real quick, just tell people where we can find you, what's the, you know, websites, shows coming up, that kind of stuff.
I feel like you also, you know, when you asked me about my playbook, I think I wanted to just say one more thing that's so important. I think it is so important to not give up. Okay, so there's so many opportunities, you know, especially when you're trying to pursue something like entertainment. You know, very few make it, right? And all the people I started with, they're either gone or successful. in their own way. They're on a TV show, they have a special, they have a successful podcast, whatever it is. But the people that quit, they're not successful. And so I'd like to just tell your, listeners and viewers that, hey, times are going to get tough. There's going to be all the reason and rejection to want to quit. But if you keep going and you keep showing up, that's where the success is. And over time, I tell I also teach comedy and mentor comedians as well. And I always tell my students, that if you can just keep going and find a reason to continue, you will be successful in 10 years in one way or another in stand-up comedy or entertainment. And everybody I know that has kept doing it for 10 years, they're all successful.
It's funny you say that. I came to LA in 1997, and I gave myself 10 years to make it.
Yeah.
And I hung on for one more year, and that's the year I actually was able to put a shingle over my door and had my own company. I stayed for that 11th year.
Sometimes it'll take 11.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I agree.
See, I was an optimist. I gave myself 5 years, but I was turned out on drugs. Right. So I was like, okay, I'll give myself 5 more years.
They always say it, overnight success takes 10 years. Yeah. So where can people find you? What's the easiest way to find you?
The way to find me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at I am Jimmy Shin. And then you can also find me on my website at jimmyshindig.com.
All right, so I got some shotgun questions. These are like, it's like Actor's Studio, but recovery-wise. You ready?
I like it. Yeah.
What's your favorite slogan, your favorite recovery slogan?
It works if you work it.
All right, what's your least favorite?
One day at a time, man.
Okay.
Just take it one day at a time.
What was your aha moment?
My aha moment. So many aha moments.
One that makes you tear up.
One that makes me tear up. When I surrendered and I just felt outpouring of God's love into my heart, and it changed my perception forever. And it made the whole world the aha moment, Didn't look at life the same. Didn't look at people the same. Didn't look at my purpose the same.
Cracked your heart. Sounds like it cracked your heart.
Yeah, it cracked my heart.
What turns you off in recovery?
What turns me off in recovery? Not too much, but if I had to say one thing, it's sometimes the clickiness of it,
What's your favorite step?
My favorite step is the third step.
Okay.
Surrender, yeah.
Love it. Thank you. What is the definition of success according to Jimmy Shin?
The definition of success is doing what you love, what you're passionate about, and making a living at it, and being able to, influence people with it.
I agree, 100. If you had to do another profession besides your own that you're in right now, what would you try?
Honestly, I'm doing exactly what I've always wanted to do with my life, and I feel like I'm right dab on purpose. I guess the other thing that if I could do anything is like be a rock star or something. I don't know. And I can't think of anything more fun for me than doing stand-up comedian.
Awesome.
Stand-up comedian.
What profession would you not want to do?
Oh man, politician. Yeah, I would, or lawyer.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny?
I was on track to be the most miserable.
Oh, you would have been one of those guys that's so miserable with money in the bank, but just wanting to jump off the 21st floor.
Yeah. But with that said, if it's your calling, and
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
those
Oh, no,
people,
yeah.
those people are happy. They're
Oh,
doing
absolutely.
what they want to do.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being
But
a
when
lawyer.
it's
It's just
not,
when it's not. And there's so many parents who say, you got to go do this, you got to go do this. And I work with a lot of those people where it's like, I don't care what your old man wants to do. What do you want to do? Tell me what you want to do, and I'm going to help you get there. And that's what we do here, and that's what I do at the Recovery Playbook. So my last question, Jimmy, is I borrowed this from James Lipton. If there is a God and you get to the pearly gates of heaven, what will God say to you?
Good work.
I agree. Good work, Jimmy. It's such a blessing to have you. Every
Thanks for
time
having me, man.
you have
It's
great
always good
energy,
talking to
and
you.
you're honest, and you're authentic. And I have watched your career. I've sat back and watched. You had a great sponsor who kept pushing you along. And
Yeah, I remember when I came back,
yeah.
you were one of the first people that I did meet.
Yep.
And I only had like a few months.
Yeah, I remember I had, no, it was for my birthday.
Yeah.
It was for my 25th birthday, and Sean text messaged me and goes, hey, can I bring one of my sponsees? And I'm like, well, it's kind of my party. I don't know who this guy is. And then you show up and it's like, I love this guy. Yeah. And so that's how it all started. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So, all right, folks, that's another episode of the Recovery Playbook. My guest today was Jimmy Shin. Awesome guy, man in recovery. I love that he teaches comedy, and he's a mentor to other comedians, and he's giving back. And his show is the Jimmy Shindig? No.
The Shindig Show.
Okay.
My website is jimmyshindig.com.
Okay, perfect. So, so blessed to have this man in recovery up here, giving his pearls of wisdom and keeping us happy and full of joy. Thank you, Jimmy, once again.